Hey, this is Donna with Sparrowstudios7 and Mr. Feeny Houdini, bringing to you I Read and I Learn, Genesis 19. Okay, my little lawnmower, give me the toy. Thank you. Such a little lawnmower. Today, we're going to be going through the commentary on the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, as well as what happened with Lot and his family. So I'm going to go through the verses verse by verse as I usually do, and then I may have to do a second video specifically about Lot and his family and a recap of the destruction. So yeah, let's get started. As always, this is the Bible that I'm taking the commentary from, in case you were interested. Verses 1 through 38, chapter 19, verses 1 through 38. The note starts off like this. The Canaanites were an evil, corrupting people. God judged their morally bankrupt civilization and warned others against becoming like them. It was difficult to get Lot and his family out of Sodom. It was more difficult to get Sodom out of Lot and his family. This chapter helped later Israelites to understand the moral and spiritual threat of people living in and around the Promised Land, such as the Canaanites and Lot's descendants, the Moabites and the Ammonites. We see them talked again in Numbers chapters 22 through 25, Deuteronomy 23 verses 3 through 6, Joshua 24:9, Judges 10:7 through 9, Judges 11 verses 4 through 5. We see in 1 Samuel 10:27, 1 Kings 11:1 through 3, and 2 Kings 24:2. Okay. Commentary on verses 1 through 14. The two angels who were with the Lord at Mamre, we saw this yesterday in verse 2 and 22 when they visited Abraham and told Sarah that she was going to have a son, and confirmed it again with Abraham that he would have a son. Visited Sodom reluctantly, knowing what kind of people lived there. Despite Lot's hospitality, they preferred lodging in the square to entering Lot's house. Commentary on verse 1. The two angels also appeared to Abraham as men in 18 verse 2. Lot was no longer living in the tents next to Sodom, as we saw he was doing in Genesis chapter 13 verse 12. He had become a citizen and leader in Sodom, sitting there at the entrance of the city. Community leaders or elders usually congregated in the gates, where legal and business transactions were publicly finalized. We'll see this happening in Genesis 23:18, Job 29:7, and verses 12 through 17 as well. As a righteous man, we'll see him mentioned in 2 Peter 2:7 through 8. Lot tried to modify the town people's wickedness by giving advice on good living. We'll see this again mentioned specifically in verse 9 of 19, where it said, "Stand back," they shouted. "This fellow came to the town as an outsider, and now he's acting like our judge. We'll treat you far worse than those other men." And they lunged toward Lot to break down the door. So even though Lot was living in the city, he tried to uphold God's law and the righteousness of God's law, even living in a town where they were blatantly wicked. Although he denounced gross evil, Lot preferred Sodom's sumptuous lifestyle to life in the hills. We saw this mentioned in chapter 13, verses 10 and 11, where there was clean living but no good life. As long as the Lord left Sodom and his family alone in Sodom, he lived comfortably there and kept his personal belief in God. But finally, he could not hold to both. Sodom would have destroyed Lot if the Lord had not destroyed Sodom. This account showed Israel that God is the righteous judge of the whole earth. See it mentioned again in chapter 18, verse 25, which we spoke about yesterday. Who will judge evildoers with justice and equity. In wicked societies, moral and ethical failures lead to social injustice. In verses 4 to 5, the townsmen's vileness was matched by Lot's hypocrisy in verses 6 through 9. So the men was like, bring out your visitors so that we can do whatever we want to them. And Lot's hypocrisy was offering them instead his virgin daughters, both options were horrible and vile. Verses 6 through 9. Lot opposed homosexuality and rape and rebuked their wicked plans, but he was hypocritically willing to sacrifice his daughters to fend off the townsmen's vice. Lot had originally pitched his tent next to Sodom. Now Sodom controlled his life. Chapter 19, verse 9. The men of the city were enraged by Lot's attempts to curtail their wickedness. Lot had apparently not condemned them before, since they were amazed that he now judged them. Verse 14. Lot's warning words were not taken seriously because of his hypocrisy. It seemed that there would not be even 10 righteous people in the city. Now, if you remember from yesterday, Abraham and God had this entire conversation where Abraham pleaded on behalf of the people of Sodom. And he got God to agree respectfully to agree that if 10 righteous people were living in the city, that the city would be saved. And God agreed to it. But apparently through this chapter, not even 10 righteous people outside of Lot and his family, they didn't even make it to 10, which honestly breaks my heart in so many ways. Lot is not let's see. The commentary on verses 15 to 23 is this. Lot escaped judgment by God's grace, but his heart was still in Sodom. Israel would forever remember Lot as lingering, halting, and being dragged to safety by angels. The Lord mercifully spared Lot for Abraham's sake. We see it mentioned in chapter 18, verse 23, and chapter 19, verse 29. Lot deserved judgment for his way of life, but he was a believer at heart, and the Lord rescued him. We see this mentioned again in 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 7 through 8. Lot is not alone in his conflicted lifestyle. Countless believers fall in with a corrupt world rather than flee a doomed society. God's people living in a pagan world must remain separate. We see this in 1 John 2:15 through 17. The corrupt world system awaits God's coming judgment, which will be far greater than the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. We see this in Matthew chapter 11, verses 23 through 24. The commentary on verses 18 through 22 says this. Lot demanded a concession from the angels even after he was delivered. He wanted to live in the small town of Zoar, which means little place. And the last note I'll read is for verses 23 through 25. We see it copied in Luke 17:29. The eruption of Vesuvius and the destruction of Pompeii in 79 AD, as well as a recent natural disaster, show how quickly a thorough catastrophe like this could happen. So I'm going to come back with another video and finish talking through the notes on chapter 19, as well as give another recap for Lot and the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Be back in just a moment. Thank you for watching.